So hi and welcome back to Living the Small Business Life. This week we are going to talk about strategy and business planning. Just before we get started, in case this is anybody's first episode, they've not listened to it before, should we just do some quick intros?
Yep. Yeah, I'm Ben Hobbs, Director of Bluebell IT Solutions. Pleased to be here.
Jumping down your throat. And I'm Ben Newbury. I'm a director of three businesses: Bluebell Cloud Solutions, Bluebell Tech, and Bluebell Business Services.
And I'm Laura, Managing Director of Move Digital. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk about strategy and business planning. So I guess let's just dive straight in for our businesses. Like, what does that involve? Like, and how do we tackle it? Let's sort of start at a kind of intro level, and then we can delve into different bits of it.
Yeah, agreed. Ben, what's the textbook say?
Yeah, so just a quick Google. Come across a blog
Always.
site. I mean, I suppose this is for starting out as a new business. So, you know, brainstorming and refining your business idea, doing market research and competitor research, picking a name. I know that was quite a big challenge for us at the beginning. Writing up a business plan. I don't know how many new businesses actually do that.
How far down this list are we going to get before we find something that one of us is actually going to say we did? Keep going.
Choosing a legal structure for your business. I suppose that's whether it's a limited company, limited liability partnership, securing business capital and funding. So whether you're putting your own money in or you've got an investor, I suppose. Registering the business and making it official, whether you want to be VAT registered and you need licenses, permits, business insurance, organising your finances, your branding. I think that's quite a difficult one. I think quite a lot of people probably get a bit lost in that and spend a lot of time on that, but it is important. Creating a website, marketing and promoting your business, and then building a team. So they're the 14 points that I found on this particular blog site that said things that you should consider before starting a business.
I think I would say 13 of those we did 6 months in to starting a small business.
Yeah.
Most of them. I think that you could spend, with those 14 points there from a textbook, you could spend years and months planning on how you are going to start your new business, how you are going to, there's tons on their website.
Yeah.
I remember, I think our first contracts that we actually signed, didn't even mention their contracts with customers.
Yeah.
I think our first few deals that we did with our customers, I don't actually think we got a signed contract. It was done on an email. And even the emails were set up on Gmail, I think, at the time when we first started. None of this stuff, it's most of it evolved from the very start. I think that, for me, the key planning was investment, knowing what we had at the start of the journey. Yeah. We did some financial planning, but it was very minimalistic. It was, X amount of heads, office costs, electricity, gas, blah, 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 cars, insurances, all of those sorts of things are very basic. But I think our first forecast, had us down 4 or 5 staff, and it went out for the whole 12 months. And I think within 3 months, the business had doubled that in headcount. So the plan sort of went out the window. So, it was, I think initially you've got to have a fair steer on your industry, I think is key. I think you've got to have a fairly good idea of what your finances are and what your business is going to cost you for the first few months. But, there's a lot there to take into consideration and plan before you started. And I know, Ben, when Bluebell Tech started, it was here's some money.
Yeah.
We've got a smaller handful of customers.
Yeah.
We need to get going with it. And, I think you were quite fortunate in the fact that Bluebell Cloud had a large number of clients at the start. Yeah. So you knew your industry, you knew what you could provide. You had a set customer base there. The branding, wow, we chose the name. Like I said, we literally come up with a street name. Like, that's how our business, the name come around off the street I live in. There was no real thought going into it. It was, we were driving back one night and it was like, oh look, there's Bluebell.
Yeah.
That'll do.
That'll do. And that's what it got to, because we spent too long on this stuff.
And you were saying, Ben, as well, that an initial, I suppose, version of your business was that actually you were working full time and had other clients.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did you do any of this, or was it just like?
So we just had an idea that, well, cloud technologies were the new thing. You know, they've been around a little while, but they were really starting to be adopted by businesses, and we thought that's what we want to get into. So we just did a bit of investigation into, well, what cloud services there were. You know, there was Google, there was Microsoft, and we looked into what support you'd get from various vendors, and Microsoft seemed to be the way to go, and is the most adopted sort of cloud platform that businesses use in terms of Microsoft 365 at the time. But yeah, we got lost really in branding for quite a while. You know, we came up multiple iterations of a logo and colours, and you know, we were like, oh, look at Apple, you know, they've got this apple and with a little chunk taken out of it, we want something like that because we want to be as big as Apple one day, and you know, all this sort of stuff we got lost in, and all the other stuff that we really needed to be concentrating on, you know, looking at finances, I think. We were winging it. We really were winging it for the first 12 months. But the fact that we had an income, both of us that set up the original business at the time, were working full time, we had minimal cost. So we didn't really need to worry about that too much. It was just like a hobby to begin with. And it was just, has this got any legs? And let's see what happens with it. But I think we were very naive, and we thought that, you know, being good at IT and what we did was enough. But actually, you've got to be able to sell. I think that's probably one of the most important things. And someone actually said to me early on that I sought some advice from, said, unless you can sell, you shouldn't really be starting a business, because you know, you've got to be able to sell your product or services or whatever and speak to people. So that was probably the biggest thing that we had to learn very quickly, was how to have conversations with people. But yeah, we set up a business probably under the wrong type of legal entity. So we set up an LLP originally, not a limited company. And I can't really remember the reasons why we did that. I think it was around the fact that we were employed, and there was stuff in our contracts around not being able to work for somebody else. So as an LLP, you're effectively self-employed. So that's how we got around that at the time, but we scrapped that anyway when we became Bluebell Technology or Bluebell IT Solutions. But again, all the branding was pretty much dealt with. We had some office space that we, you know, Ben kindly put up for us in the early days, phone system, mobiles, you know, all that was sort of there for us. So we were able to tap into that. But yeah, we didn't really have a clue on finances, cash flow, forecasting. You know, how we knew that, say we were earning £50,000 at the time. We knew that we both needed to be earning that sort of salary to quit our day jobs. And it was like, what are the steps to get us to there so we can quit our day jobs? But we didn't know. So we were just sort of winning a few new clients here and there, and you know, after 12 months we're like, we're miles away from this, what are we going to do, and do we keep doing it or not? So I think having a bit of a, you know, you would probably say, Ben, a bit of a back of a fag packet plan, you know, just so you've got an idea of what you do need to do, and that's something we learned very quickly.
And I think you've both kind of touched on it. I think it's also like, you can have all this strategy and planning, but then once you're in the business and actually running it, like you say, you grew out of your plan within 3 months.
Yeah, it changes.
And things that you did, I'm sure, like when you were working on it outside of your full-time jobs, you know, overheads are different, like expenses are different. And then suddenly you're setting up and you're like, oh, we need an office. And, you know, so I think that can be difficult as well. It's sort of like some part of strategy and planning for me is always like kind of, you know, dressing for the business you want to have. Like, you know, are you always going to be remote? Are you going to, like, how are you going to be able to move towards your goals? Or, you know, like we were talking about last time, how are you going to sort of, you don't want to plan for the worst, but at the same time, how are you going to make sure that your business can weather some kind of storms?
I think the key for a plan is that if you have some headline goals that you want to achieve, I think that's the first starting point, as in, you know, where do you want that business to be? How much do you want to earn out of that business, or what do you want to take, if anything? You know, are you starting this business to become a lifestyle business? Because there's a big difference between somebody who wants to start a lifestyle business that will facilitate their, you know, income and maybe give them a small pension in the future, to somebody who wants to grow a business to be the biggest and the best within a particular industry. And I think there are too many people start with the visions of, I will be the best in this industry, doing the best job for every single customer that we come across. The reality is that you won't. There are too many people in given industries at the moment that have been there, done it for too long, and you're too far behind the boat. Unless there's something new, a completely new industry, a new evolutionary product that you can sell, that's completely different, because that will have legs on its own. But yeah, your starting point for me is what do you want out of that business? And I think I sat down with, and I mentioned it in the first episode, when I sat down with my business partner, Mick, I said, what do you want out of it? And he said, I don't want millions of pounds. I just don't want a mortgage, and I want to be able to stay at home with his wife, and if I have to get a part-time job in Tesco's to pay the Sky bill, heating bills and things like that, then that's good enough for me. Mine's completely different. I've got 2 young children. I say young children, they're not young. I've got a 19 and a 16-year-old, but one's training to be an accountant, has got an apprenticeship. I wanted to start a business that was more a lifestyle business. However, I wanted it to be in a position to offer, a small group of people positions within that business, and also facilitate their personal growth, and also have a business that if my children want to come in and join that business, it's there for them to do.
Yeah.
And when I get older and I think it's time to hang up the keys, the business can continue to trade, provide me with a salary. It's like an effective pension, as it were, or an addition to a pension. So I think that for me is your key, is where do you start, is what do you want out of it? If you want world domination, then yes, I would suggest going through a plan like that in its nth degree is the right way to go. But if you don't want world domination, you just want a business that will sustain itself, then do a small plan. It doesn't have to be war and peace. You've got to understand your commercials, you've got to understand what your budgets are, you've got to understand what your cost base is going to be. You've got to plan, like you said, worst case scenario, what happens in 3 to 6 months. But in our case, and I think it's the case with a lot of small businesses, those plans that you put, when you're sat in a room going, okay, what are we going to do? How many sales are we going to make? What marketing strategies are we going to use? You could just literally, the list would just be endless. It'd be endless. And you would end up, making a plan for a plan of a plan. Then you've lost it. You want to understand your products. Can you sell that product? Is it a completely saturated market? Well, I would suggest telco is a saturated market, as well as probably IT. Yeah. But can you win business? Yes, you can. And like you said, Ben, the priority is sales, because, you can have many problems within your business journey, especially at the start, not got insurances. Oh God, I forgot to do that. Or, we've had those instances. Oh God, the car insurance ran out 3 days ago, or the MOT ran out on the van, or whatever it may be. Those things you will experience in your journey, but most of these problems can be fixed if you're selling.
Yeah.
If you are not selling, you can't fix any of these problems. You can employ someone to come in and do the planning for you if you're successful and you're selling. But, we didn't even, at one point, we had one operational head that come into the business when we first started. And our first actual plan was to sell mobile phones. That's all we were selling. We weren't selling any other products. And within 2 weeks of being sat in an office, we were all of a sudden selling VoIP telephone systems and connectivity. And it was like, hang on a minute. We could have spent 6 months planning on what we were going to be selling around mobiles, but that has completely changed now. Yeah. And within the first few weeks, we're now selling VoIP telephone system, which, by the way, I don't think anybody had any experience of selling VoIP telephone systems at that point, or very limited amount of experience. And we just thought, do you know what? There's money to be made in this. You can see the commercial benefits. Let's go for it. But we didn't have time. We had like 4 or 5 members of staff. It was everybody's hands to the deck. And we were out selling, and the problem we started having was we were selling all to these customers, and it was like, oh, we don't know how we're actually going to implement this, and then you get a whole load of challenges. I think your focuses are better tuned in on those elements than it is on what may or may not happen. As long as you've got that end goal and you know where you want to be, that for me was key, and it's the same for any of the businesses. Ben, Bluebell Tech's exactly the same. and move, to be fair.
Yeah.
We've only had a meeting not so long ago about planning.
Yeah,
and the
well, I
plan's
was
been
going to
very
say,
simple.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, like, so we've sort of talked about like planning at the beginning, but all of us are at a stage where, we're in the businesses and we're actually running the businesses, and we have all in the last month or so had strategy sessions for all of our businesses. So, like, what do you think is different now that you're running the business, that you're in a different phase? Like, what does strategy planning look like now that it's up and running?
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that, Laura, because we've just had a planning day in January, which we involved obviously all three businesses in. But from Bluebell IT Solutions side of things, it was actually the first time that we've got all the team together, taken them out of the office for a morning. We had a bit of lunch and pastries and all that sort of stuff, which was really nice, to talk about our strategy and planning for just the short term initially. So it's the first time we've done that as a business. I think we've just been running with it to date. But we've now got to a point where, we've got 10 employees, and we're starting to find that, we lack a lot of processes. So when you're quite small, you can do things in your head, or, you know who to ask for this and that. But as you're building the team and new people are coming in, we've really got to start looking at those processes, and we've started actually defining some goals. So we've got a turnover target now, and how do we get to that turnover? What have we got to do in terms of sales, in terms of marketing? And part of that is like building a new website, which should hopefully bring in more leads for us and convert. We've brought in another sales resource, so we've got double the amount of people going out selling now, but also operationally how we onboard our new customers. And then we're starting to look at things like KPIs, how we actually measure performance in terms of sales, but also the operational guys, how many tickets are they dealing with, how many inquiries are they dealing with, are they dealing with things in the correct time frame within SLA of our contracts. So we're really starting to hone in on all these things now. But I think when we started out, like I said, we were just running with it, and then we had the COVID era again, which was you just got to get through it, but now we're really sort of seeing an element of growth, and we've sort of built some solid foundations and looking to build on that. It's really about putting all these processes in place, and I think that's really key for us at the moment. So that's the first time we've done that, and it was a really good exercise because it just got everyone in a room. This is where we are, this is where we've been, this is where we're looking to go. Everyone had input into that as well, and myself and my business partner Waj, we spent time putting a slide deck together, and we went through our sort of plans, and it was just good to present that to the business. And that's something we want to do on a quarterly basis now, because we've thrown these sort of targets out there and what we're looking to do, but we want to be continually reviewing those and obviously updating the plan as we go along, because as we've said a minute ago, things change. Some new products or services might come onto the market that we start selling, or we're sort of shifting away just from managed IT services now, and obviously cyber security is a massive thing, so we're getting asked about that from our clients quite a lot. So we're looking at products and tools that can assist with that, which is also additional revenue for the business. So we're working on all this stuff at the moment. But yeah, I think probably one of the big things that I've learned over the last 12 months is really around cash flow. Knowing what's coming in, what's going out, when it's coming in, when it's going out, what your end of month balance is going to be. And now I'm starting to look at bringing that over 2 months rather than just what we're going to be at the end of this month. And, that will sort of move forward as well. So just starting to get a grip of everything, where we are, get on top of stuff. And until you get to that point, we wouldn't be able to plan forward because we didn't really know where we were.
That's the key to it, Ben, because you now have, especially from the last 12 to 24 months, rather than you sat in a room at the very beginning and trying to create a plan with fictional figures, really, you've got some core foundation figures now that you can get your average deal size. How much a customer is going to generate you potentially in revenue. So you over the last 3 weeks and from the planning day have been able to put in quite a robust plan, and yes, you've now got your end goal, but you've also can see the bits in between now and how that's going to generate you. But I think going back to when you're starting that business, it's very difficult to understand how you're going to get to that end goal without putting your toe in the water really, because it can fluctuate and change so much, but you're in a bit of a better position now because you can plan out your business. The same with Bluebell Cloud. You know, we sold a proportion of our base 12 months ago, literally, 12 months and 9 days. 12 months, 9 days ago. And for us to now grow again to get to the same position we were, on the face of it and planning is very easy because we have a lot of historical data and information that we can revert back to, putting a plan into place to go again. And I think that's been your key point for especially over the last 3 weeks of planning. You now have that end goal, and rather than looking at the month by month, you can now see further down the track and next year's planning as well. Because you've got a target in mind and you know what you need to do now from a planning perspective to get to that number. Whereas 12 months ago, if we'd have said, right, we want to do 2 million turnover in 24, 25, you'd have been like, okay, we just have to work hard.
No, absolutely. And I think part of that as well, when you're saying like the difference between planning when you're starting out and then planning once you're actually running the business, I think part of that sort of early thing as well, and part of what you were saying about, you know, are there going to be new products or services that you offer, is just taking action. It's just 100%. Actually like trying it out. So, you know, part of the one half of kind of what Move Digital does is the podcasting, but actually the kind of original version of that was that Geraint wanted to do a lot of work around voice. So like, you know, smart speakers and what was voice going to be like, you know, how was it going to be like talking to Alexa? What were you going to, what skills for Alexa businesses could build and things like that. And he did a lot of work around that. And actually that hasn't, in terms of a commercial proposition, really blossomed in quite the way that he thought. But out of that came the podcasting, and that's what he actually...
Surprise, we're sat here podcasting.
And now here we are, podcasting. And so I think, you know, having that kind of flexibility, and then as you say, as your business grows, being able to bring the people that work in your business into that planning, into the vision that you've got, into how you're all gonna work together to get to that goal, and what that goal is, like for them to know what that goal is. I think that's quite a distinct part of, you know, a distinct
100%.
Stage in planning as well.
Well, you think just 2 products alone that you've come across in the last 6 months has had thereabouts a 10% increase in your turnover. And those products have dropped in the last 6 months. So, you know, 10% change in your turnover is a considerable amount for a small business. So, you know, you think back to when you were we had the plan originally for Bluebell IT, those products didn't exist. And now they've already added 10% on. You know, another 2 products added in, there's another 10% and another 10%. So I think you're right. In terms of your planning for a small business, I would say that you've got to get the basics down on paper. You've got to understand what your costs are for the good 6 to 12 months, if nothing was to change other than the people that are joining that business at the very start. You've got to understand your cash flow and what that looks like. You've got to have a good understanding of your marketplace and how you're going to go to market, because that can be the most difficult bit, is attracting new business and sales. And again, who's going to be responsible for what areas of that business? And I think a lot of stuff will just evolve naturally. I think for the first 12 months, we had a holding page as a website. It literally was a holding page. And I think you ended up coming in and actually converted it, saying, why have we got a holding page as a website? But it didn't stop us transacting. That's my point. You can plan so many of these things out and launch a website and have all your marketing collateral and have all of these things. It doesn't stop you running a business. You know, we did from zero in our first year. Bluebell Cloud did 250,000. The following year it did 500,000. The following year it did 1 million or 1.1. You know, it was doubling, and then COVID hit, which we'll probably talk about in another podcast. But you know, it was doubling, and there was, in the very beginning, there was minimal planning. It's like I always say, Ben, it's on the back of a fact packet. You know, you literally can write down your core numbers. You've got costs and your income, and that's it. You know, so it does evolve. It does evolve.
So one of the things that we said in our intro episode was that not only were we going to talk about the realities of running a small business. So I think within strategy and planning, I guess what is it, we've kind of touched on it, but, what's happened when plans go wrong? Has there been like a planning fail or that you can think of in the business, or what have you done to rectify that? Or, I guess, have there been like key learnings from that?
I think the easiest way to explain a plan is very simple. If you have a plan and you see it going wrong, you can make fundamental mistakes, and one of those is not taking action when that plan is not going the way you think it is.
Yeah.
So, Ben, I've had plans in the business around how we want to grow, how many staff that means, etc., recruitment levels. But if you don't make a call on those individuals quickly, that can impact on your plan heavily. There are some things you can't get away with, i.e. if you commit to getting a bigger office, your likelihood is you're going to sign a lease. That cost is there, whether your plan is successful or fails. 9 times out of 10, the way you're going to increase your sales is through your marketing strategy and salespeople. And if that starts to go wrong, you need to make those changes quickly. And it's about speed of action. If you don't notice those things going wrong early, then you're in a world of trouble.
Yeah.
And it's how you pull yourself around that. And it's all around cost management and cash flow. That's the key for me.
Yeah, I think for us as well, in terms of where we were and where we are now, having regular review meetings has been critical to that. So every Friday, myself, Ben and Wadge get together, and Friday morning before everything kicks off for the day, we get in early and we just talk about challenges for the week, what the focus is for the next week, are we on plan, are we on track, thoughts and ideas, and then we go away and look to implement those ideas. Whereas I think before we didn't have those catch-ups or reviews, and like I said, we were just drifting with it. And then you can't see the wood through the trees. But also what that's allowed myself and Wadge to do is, rather than being so involved in the day-to-day all the time, because we're both technical people, myself and Wadge, to actually elevate ourselves to actually start working on the plan and the strategy and make time for that, because we never had the time, because we were so in the weeds of everything all the time, getting involved in everything all the time. And now we've sort of got very defined roles, and we catch up weekly, make sure we're on track, go away and then implement those things into the business. So the review period for us that we've implemented has been really important, because before we were just say drifting, and without a plan as well.
No, absolutely. And I always feel like, for me, with any kind of plan or like strategy or like having that end goal, that end goal could change, but overall, while you're working towards it, what it's giving you is a template to make decisions. Okay, do we want to do this or this? Okay, well, if we wanted to get here, then actually the smart choice is this thing. And I think that's often what people miss generally. I think strategy can feel like something that is taking up time. It can feel like it's taking up time without any immediate benefit, but actually the benefit is just so big that you just don't notice it. And if you don't have that, then you are just drifting around thinking, oh, we could do this or we could do this, and then you either can't make decisions, or you're making the wrong decisions, or you just don't know where you're going then.
I mean, we went down a rabbit hole at the beginning where, coming from a technical IT background, we became very focused on systems that we use and integration of those systems and making them work perfectly. And we thought, having a fancy looking website would bring us in loads of leads, but actually you've got to invest in SEO, and that's a long game. That takes 6-12 months to actually get yourself ranking on Google. So what we really need to do is pick up the phone, and start ringing people and getting out to see people.
And getting revenue in.
Which is where we got stuck. And actually, if I was to start this all again, those are the things I'll be focusing on, not fancy systems. You can say, with money, you can implement systems, you can pay for them to be implemented, rather than trying to implement them yourselves and them not working quite correctly, and then you're sort of stuck with it and things like that. And that's what we got bogged down with at the beginning, rather than, right, where do we want to be? Where do we want to get to? And what steps do we need to take to get there? So you can easily get lost, I think, and go down rabbit holes all the time. Whereas if you're regularly reviewing where you're at and where you want to get to and how you get there, you can be ticking things off as you go along.
And I think, you touched on this for Move, but like, I think sometimes the best thing can just be keeping it simple.
Well,
and
that's what I was just going to say. 6 things we come out with on the strategy meeting for Move around how that business is going to move forward. and in terms of revenue and targets for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But they're very basic things.
Absolutely.
They're not hard. They weren't, we thrash those out in what? A couple of hours?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I think it's already, the benefits of that are already starting to show. We know
100%.
where we're going. I've certainly found it incredibly helpful, even though I'm just, well, not just, but now I'm back in the business actually running it like day to day.
Yeah.
That's incredibly helpful. It's just like, oh, right, we're all on the same page now. This is the direction of travel. And I think in some ways, I think honestly, Move's almost gone back a stage. I think maybe we've gone back to sort of more of a startup planning strategy stage. But I think that's entirely right for what we need to do right now. And I think we can all see that it's going to go up, and it's going to go up quickly. So I think there's also that to consider. Like, you feel like you're going in a certain direction towards a certain goal, but sometimes you go backwards to go forwards.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a cliche, but I think it can often be entirely the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, you think with Bluebell Cloud, pre-COVID, we were 27 staff, 28 staff. When we come back from COVID, we dropped down to 6. So we'd not lost, but we'd 21. We basically, during that time, we'll talk about that a bit more in another podcast, but we dropped right back in terms of staff, and we're on a build again. And the problem with dropping back to that level of staff is that our customer base didn't reduce by that amount. So we still had the same customers to maintain and provide a service for that we had pre-COVID with a lot more staff. Yeah. And that's led to some of the decisions we made last year. And now we're on that growth again. And we've even, some of the products we're looking at the moment, even some of those we didn't even think about 6 months ago. Some of the services that we're looking to offer, we didn't even think about 6 months ago. So, planning and strategy is all very well and good, but you've got to be able to adapt and move quickly and make your decisions quickly. Which is what we talk about quite regularly, Ben, on our Friday catch-ups. You've implemented something in here with Waj from your service desk perspective that's going to generate revenue that I don't know of any other. Well, we asked the guys that have worked for multiple IT businesses that is going to generate you revenue that nobody else is doing. That wasn't in the plan. That was a conversation around these strategy meetings. So I think Ben's right. It's all very well and good having a plan, but you've got to be able to take a step back in a business and say, let's just step away from the rat run and let's have a little chat and let's have a look at the business from a bird's eye view and see where the potential holes are, where the potential benefits are, where we can increase sales, because ultimately you can fix most of your problems with sales.
What's it you say about a plan? 100% plan and...
I'd rather have an 80% plan and execute at 100% than a 100% plan and execute at 80%.
Yeah.
And I think, sometimes you strive for perfection, but it's
never going to happen.
Running a business isn't necessarily linear, is it? It's up and down and up again and down a bit and up a bit.
You think about the industries that we were... Not so much Move's industry, because there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of people doing it, and not doing it at the level Move's doing it at, with a client base that Move's doing it with. But you look at the IT industry and the telecoms industry, you only have to scour LinkedIn. I guarantee you there'll be a post from someone saying, we're the best in the industry, we've got this, we've got that, we've done this, we've done that. That's rubbish. The culture of the UK is a complaining culture. It's a complaining culture. So the likelihood of them putting a good or a bad review on there, there are so many ways to get those reviews removed. And it's not about trying to portray yourself as the best, because only once you've onboarded that customer will they know what your service is like. And if you don't provide a good service from, they're going to go. They're ultimately going to go.
And I think as well, like kind of what you're saying about the 80% planning, 100% effort, I think it's also like you need a bit of that to step up in your business. Like you're talking about new products or services that you just didn't even know existed, or like, for Move, it's taking on more podcast projects and being able to say, yes to them and actually facilitate them, but then, you know, go bigger, go better. You know, how can we? And I don't think I could plan to do that. I think I have conversations with clients where they're like, we'd really like to do this. And there's just something where I'm like, we're going to do this. And I might not have 100% proof that I've done it before, but I know that we can do it and we can do it really well. Yeah. And I think there's part of that in kind of strategy and planning, that you can like push yourself to do that, to like, you can plan and you can put things in place. So when you want to make that little jump and you want to just go for something a bit bigger, you've got so much behind you that you know that you're going to be okay. However, that project, you know, probably it's going to be absolutely awesome, but you know, if it doesn't go exactly how you planned, you've got all of that behind you to help you out as well.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, going back to your question about what do you do when plans go wrong, I think most things that haven't necessarily gone wrong, it's just we haven't been able to implement them as quickly as we would like. Because when you're a small business, you're spinning so many plates all the time, and sometimes you've just got to lock yourself away, take yourself out of the office for half a day to work on something. So I wouldn't say we've had really like failed plans. I think it's just about what happens when you deviate off of that plan or something changes. How do you deal with that? And that's really important because, as you've said, you know, you can go and speak to a client, something could come up. Oh, you've got a new idea. The plan that you had, you might have to change. So I think it's how you navigate your way day to day, but have that plan in the background as well. But that plan is always evolving and changing based on what comes up. And it's
hit nail on the head there.
So should we bring it back to some final thoughts? I guess what I was thinking was, if you were talking to somebody who was just starting up their business around kind of strategy and planning, like what kind of quick advice, or what would you say to them when they're thinking about their strategy and planning?
I would suggest that they have some high-level goals and some high-level numbers that they know they need to achieve in a particular time. They need to understand their industry and the marketplace that they're going for. They need to understand their product, and they can implement the products that they're selling, and be prepared to change and adapt very, very quickly, because running a small business can adapt and change very, very quickly. I think that's part of the beauty of running a small business, that you can change very, very quickly and get your fingers in other pies, you know, and focus. And sales and revenue is the key focus for any new business. And don't worry about, have I got a professional website? Does my marketing look the best in the industry? You know, all these things can evolve and change over a period of time. Put your stamp on something, put it to bed, get on with it, and then get into your business and start selling, because that will help you along that journey. And if you're selling enough, you can pay people to help you with your marketing. You can pay people to help you with your bookkeeping, your accounts and insurances, and so on and so forth. So, you know, my advice would be, get your headline numbers, understand your marketplace, understand your strategy to get to your market, and then just go for it as quickly and as hard as you possibly can, and put everything into it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Just get on with it. Just get on with it.
Action.
Yeah, take action. You know, have a loose plan, and just get running with it. You know, because if you don't, you'll just spend so much time dilly-dallying that you just won't get on with it. So
don't be scared to fail.
No,
that's probably my biggest thing. Don't be scared to fail, because the likelihood is you're going to fail. At some point. So just don't be scared of failure.
Funny you should say that. Being scared to fail. When it started Bluebell IT, it was my wife that was really worried, you know, and the pressure that it put on her. You know, I had a secure job, lots of overtime opportunity, private healthcare, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And then it's like, right, I'm going to make a go at this. And like, I remember the look of fear on her face when I said, right, we're going for this. I'm handing in my notice tomorrow.
And pressing the button.
Yeah, exactly. We're going for this, and you know.
She's like, where's your plan?
Yeah.
One pager.
Ben told me it was fine on the fact packet.
Yeah. But it was like, I just need to do this, and you know, haven't looked back since, to be honest with you. And you know, she's obviously bought into it now, and she's seeing the reassurances and some of the benefits from it.
That's added stress, though.
Yeah.
That's added stress. Yeah. Even though your partner may not be putting stress on you directly,
yeah.
you knowing that they are nervous adds an element of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having the children adds an element of stress. But you've just got to go for it, like you said. It's just head down and work hard.
Yeah. I'd agree with all of that, and I think I would add, if you're starting a business with other people, I think like that piece around getting other people on board, like what is the vision, having that thing. And if you're starting it by yourself, one of the things that I did when I started freelancing was I just went and had a coffee with as many people that I knew that I worked with, like that weren't necessarily even doing things that I was doing. And because even just saying out loud, setting my stall out, saying this is what I'm going to do, and have no one laugh. Like nobody turned around to me and went, "Oh, what do you think you're doing?" Everyone was like, "Oh, I think that's a great idea." And they might not have been in a position to work with me or to be a client or whatever it was, but again, it's a form of action. Just go and like speak it out loud somewhere.
100%. Mick, my business partner's got a great saying, because you often hear people say, "Oh, they were really lucky in business. They were really lucky." And his saying is luck is where hard work and opportunity meet. Yeah. That's where you create your own luck. Yeah. And that would be my advice. Hard work, opportunity. The opportunity is your business. Hard work, and you hopefully will be lucky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Great. Well, thanks guys. It's another great episode. And just to finish up, obviously, if you enjoyed this one, then like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time.